welcome back. My name is Ari and I just got some new makeup in the mail, so I went a little overboard today. These lashes are from a company that one of my friends created and they were like huge. I've got some calmer ones too, but these were like big, so I was like, okay, I need to go crazy with the eyeshadow. And then I got some new lip glosses and one of them was black and I never wear black lipstick, so I was like, yeah, why the hell not? So we're doing glam makeup today. Anyway, you're not here for my makeup, you're here for some book reviews. So today is the mid-month wrap-up and I'm going to go through the books that I have read up to this point in the month. Actually, not quite. I'm going to the books that I have read up to February 12th because the Blackathon vlog, because Blackathon week started on the 13th, so all of the books that I read from the 13th to the 19th, I believe, are going to be in my Blackathon vlog, which should go up on the 20th. So anyway, let's just jump into the books. So the first book that I read this month was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This book is just like general fiction, maybe contemporary fiction, about a Black woman who is a babysitter. She gets a call from these parents because a brick or an egg or something was thrown through their window, and they ask her to come grab their daughter and take her to the local grocery store while they deal with the police. So the little 5-year-old girl is not like traumatized or anything. And she's like, hey, I'm at a party, I'm not particularly dressed for babysitting. I will do it, but I'm just letting you know that clothing wise, not super appropriately dressed. And they're like, hey, we just want you to get our daughter out of the house. It is no big deal. Please come grab her. And so she does. She comes and gets the little girl, takes her to the grocery store, and the security guard at the grocery store accuses her of kidnapping the little girl. Now, we have a random white guy who decides to film this interaction between her and the security guard, and then eventually the father shows up and is like, dude, what the fuck? And so that's like the first chapter, the intro to the book, but that's not like the whole story of the book. What this story really is about like performative allyship. So you've got the white dude that filmed it and then the mother of the little girl who both see themselves as allies of Black people in different ways, and how neither one of their allyships is actually listening to what Black people want or need. It's all about what they think that Black people need, or what would make them look good to other people. So the mom is very much like a mommy blogger type woman, the kind of person that I really don't like, honestly. And she just thinks that she knows everything based off of her own life experiences and that everybody's life experiences are like hers. She's also like really creepy when she comes to just like generally fetishizing people. She seems to like have a crush or like fall in love with like everybody. And so the guy, the white guy, she and him went to high school together and they absolutely hate each other. And even every time she sees him, she's like, what if he falls in love with me? What if he wants to sleep with me? And then like imagine sleeping with him while really she's like pissed at him. And it's just like this really weird thing. Even her babysitter, she's like stalks her and like falls in love with her. It's just a really creepy but realistic personality trait. The guy, on the other hand, like just fetishizes Black people in general. He kind of portrays himself as somebody who wants to be black without any of the consequences. So anything cool about being black, he's like, I want that. But any of the bad things like getting arrested or microaggressions, no, he doesn't want that. He's gonna stick with being white for those things. So it's a very interesting take on like different types of allyship and how there are multiple different types of performative allyship. Overall, I gave that one 4 stars. I enjoyed it very much. The next book that I read is The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. This I got in my Feminist Book Club book box. This is a self-help book, which automatically meant it wasn't for me. I don't do self-help. I don't like it at all. And then this is also self-help that like lumps being fat in with like disability, race, sexual preference, sexual identity, and I'm not sure that I consider your weight in the same like category as those other things. But in the end, I don't actually care. Like, as long as you're not hurting somebody else, you could do whatever the hell you want with your own body, honestly. If you are fat and happy, then God bless you. I'm glad that you are happy with yourself. But if you are maybe want to be happy with yourself, but you're struggling to be happy with yourself and you like self-help, this may be something for you. It does cover other things other than just being overweight. It's also like just general, like if you're disabled, you're a minority, you're queer, anything along those lines, it does cover. But like I said, in general, I don't like self-help books, so this was never for me. I ended up giving this a 2-star, and that's probably a little bit generous. Next book was Wandering in Strange Lands by Morgan Jerkins. This is a audiobook that I read through my Libro FM influencer program, and this is a story, well, it's nonfiction, and it's tracing Morgan Jerkins' ancestry through the Great Migration. So she is a black woman and she is tracing her American black ancestry. She's not going anywhere outside of America, but where her family originated from before they ended up in New Jersey, I believe is where she was born. So the first chapter is about Gullah Geechee culture in Georgia and South Carolina. I went to college in Charleston, so I was a little bit familiar with Gullah Geechee culture, but not like overly familiar, and I thought like the details of this were very, very interesting, but also sad because of like the black erasure that you will see in like tours, especially like plantation tours. The second part was her family on the other side being traced through like Creole culture. So, and like the belief that Creole peoples don't necessarily consider themselves black or white, and that how some groups or how they are seen as uppity sometimes, and just the exploration of that was also extremely interesting. The next group, or the next part of the book, was about Native American culture, because a lot of black people claim, according to Morgan Jerkins, not according to me, claim Native American ancestry, and she knows that her family claims Native American ancestry, but when she took like a DNA, like an ancestry DNA test, she did not see any like Native American ancestry, even though her family still claims it. And this explores like why many black families claim Native American culture, and why even if you take a DNA test, that DNA test might not be as accurate as you think it is. So she travels to Oklahoma for this and the Cherokee tribal lands, and I did not know that modern Cherokee tribal law is so fucking racist. Like, their laws are still racist. Like if you are black, like at any tiny little fraction of black, you can vote in like tribal councils and things, so you are considered part of the tribe, but you can't have any benefits at all. Like none. So, and that's basically traced through your ancestry. So if your ancestry was ever considered like a free, like a freed something, I don't remember what it's called, but it's something to have to do with like being like a freed slave. Then you were considered black and you get absolutely no tribal benefits at all. So, but because you can vote in like the tribe, then you were considered part of the tribe as far as the American government goes, and then that means the Cherokee get more benefits based on the amount of people. Even if you're black, you will not reap any of the benefits that the tribe overall gets. So I thought that was very interesting. And then the final part is like her personal history, and she lived in California for a while, and so it talks about like the race riots in the early 90s, and like gang culture and stuff like that in Los Angeles. So out of the 4 places that she traced her family history from, I've lived in 4 of them. Like I was born in Oklahoma, even though I'm not part of the Cherokee tribe at all. I'm not part of any Indian tribe at all. And then I went to college in Charleston, which is in South Carolina, and I live in LA now. So very interesting to me. I highly recommend this for anybody. Anybody who's interested at all in like the history of the Great Migration. Overall, I gave that 4 stars. The next book that I read was Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. This is a very, very long book that compares the caste system in India, the United States, and Nazi Germany, where different subsets of people are considered either a higher class or a lower caste. And not class, a higher class caste where different subsets of people are considered either a higher caste or a lower caste based off of something like to do with their birth. Like in a class, CLASS system, you can change, you can go from like middle class to upper class, or go from upper class to like lower class. In a caste system, that will never change. Like if you were considered black in America, you're not ever going to be in the same caste as a white person. Or if you're in Nazi Germany, if you're considered Aryan, you're always going to be of a higher caste than a Jewish person. So, and then there's a completely different system for India that's based off of like the Hindu religion, and mostly identified by your last name, because in Hindu religion you are reborn. So if you've lived a good life, you are being reborn into a higher caste, and if you've lived like an evil or horrible life, you're being reborn into a lower caste. So that one's all based on religion, but it traces the similarities throughout. One of the most interesting things is Nazi Germany spent years researching racial laws in the American South before setting up their own legal system, and they thought that the laws against black people were too harsh. Nazi Germany thought American laws against black people were too harsh. Like, that's how fucked up the United States is, in case you were questioning it still for some reason. Overall, the premise of that was very interesting, but it was told in a very academic way, and it was long. It was so long. It was like 400 something pages. So I gave it a 3 star just because I got bored a lot, honestly. Next up, I read another audiobook, which was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. And this book is a novel told in verse, and the author, Elizabeth Acevedo, and another woman narrate it. So it's much more interesting to hear the novel than it is to just like read it, because you get that like poetry tonal inflection and stuff like that that you won't get from like reading the words on the page. This is a fictional story that Elizabeth Acevedo decided to write after hearing about American Airlines Flight 587, which was a regularly scheduled flight from New York to the Dominican Republic that crashed into Queens a few months after September 11th, 2001. And it was the third largest death toll of any American flight in history. And no one knows about it because most of the people who died on it were Hispanics, and it wasn't a terrorist attack. It was a mechanical malfunction. So white people didn't care. But basically what this book is there was a flight very similar to those events, to historical events that crashed, and one of the men on the flight was a father, and he had two separate families. He had a wife and a daughter in the Dominican and a wife and a daughter in New York City, and he would spend 6 months of the year with each of the other ones, and then telling the family that he wasn't with, that he was in the other country on business. And it's basically like these two daughters figuring out that they have a sister that they never knew about, and that their father wasn't everything that they always thought he was. And I thought this was a fantastic book. It's sad, but it's also touching, and Elizabeth Acevedo does a great job like portraying, we got sirens. Elizabeth Acevedo does a great job portraying like teenage girls and like the stupid things that teenage girls might do while still making a compelling story. So I enjoyed this, 4 stars. After that, I read the first book in this month's Shannara series, which is Genesis of Shannara, and the first book is called Armageddons Children. This series takes place like 80-ish years after the previous book, and the world has ended. This is a dystopian series, so this follows completely new characters because everybody's dead. The world has ended, except for a handful of people, but the word and goodness is still trying to fight, still trying to find a small subset of people to survive. And that's kind of what that's about. I'm not going to go into details here. A, because it's in the middle of a series, and B, because I'm going to have an entire video on this that you'll see later this month. Spoiler filled. After that, I read Stamped, which is by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kennedy. Ibram X. Kennedy wrote Stamped from the beginning, and then Jason Reynolds took that book and remixed it for a younger audience. And this is basically like the history of racism in America that you don't learn in school. And holy shit, is this interesting. First off, it's funny, but funny in a haha, I can't believe white people are that fucking stupid, and not a haha funny racism type of way, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense, Jesus. But it's teaching history in a entertaining way instead of just like info dumping in like a academic way. So this one is really targeted towards like a younger audience, maybe like high school, to be like, hey, what you learn in school isn't the end all be all. Like, all of the history you're learning in school is extremely whitewashed, and it is. So I recommend this for anybody. I love this. I learned so much, and it makes me want to purchase the original version of this, Stamped from the Beginning. Stamped got 5 stars from me. After that, I read Miss Subways by David Duchovny. This was a book box book. I want to say it's my Piece and Pages, but I'm not 100% sure. This was weird, and I'm struggling to remember what it was about right now. So it's basically like mythology, gods and goddesses, elves, demons, stuff like that, like, exist, and they're all in New York. And this woman is experiencing like different life events with these gods and goddesses, and you can't tell throughout the book whether she is hallucinating these things because there's a potential that she has a brain tumor, or if these events are actually happening. It was pretentious, yet I kind of liked it. I would recommend this for anybody who really, really likes mythology, from like any nationality or point of origin mythology, because this has like everything. It's not just like Western mythology. There's Eastern and African inspired mythology as well. So if you like mythology, maybe try this one, but I didn't like love it, and I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. 3 stars. Next, I read The Elves of Sintra, which is the next book in the Shannara, or in the Genesis of Shannara series. There are elves. There are elves that live in Oregon, and that's all I'm going to tell you about that one. It was 3 stars. I've been horrible about holding up books today, but apparently I just don't want to hold anything up. After that, I read White Negroes by Lauren Michelle Jackson. I think that's right. This is about cultural appropriation, or it's supposed to be about cultural appropriation. This is a series of essays, and a lot of the essays like feel super dated. Like, the first essay that it opens with is Christina Aguilera culturally appropriating Black culture in like the early 2000s during her Dirty album phase, which, yeah, she did, but is that really like the example that we're going to use from right now? Because it's so easy to brush off as like, yeah, people were really stupid in the 90s and cultural appropriate a lot of things that we know not to do today. That's at least how it feels to me. Most of these essays just felt like really missing their point. Like, the author would try to make this really good point, and then she'd distract from the point that she was making by going off on like tangents that it was like no one actually thinks that's not cultural appropriation. Like, one of the tangents she went on in the art portion was there's a white male artist who submitted to an art show pretending to be a Black woman. No one in the universe thinks that's okay. Like, there's no question that that is way not okay. And you're missing, like, the point of that chapter was to talk about, like, Black art not getting, like, Black artists not getting as much of a limelight as they should. Like, being left out of shows because the art community pretends not to see color. Even though the art community is predominantly white. And instead of like talking about that, it's focusing on this guy who does something that no one thinks is okay. And that's basically how every chapter goes. I have a huge breakdown on like every problem I had with this book on my Goodreads like review, which will be linked. I mean, my Goodreads is always linked in the description box. Overall, I gave this 2 stars because I liked what it was trying to do. I just don't think it executed what it was trying to do well. And that is everything that I've read in the first half of the month. Let me know in the comments what you think about any of those books, and everything else will be covered in either my Blackathon vlog or the end of the month wrap up. All of these books will be featured again in the end of the month wrap up, but not like me talking in depth about them again. So thank you for checking out this wrap up, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.